Most people who are always late don't actually have a time problem. In reality, they just have a habit of putting absolute trust in a future version of themselves that never actually shows up. By the end of this video, you'll see exactly why that same promise keeps failing, even when you genuinely mean it. You look at the clock while pulling on your shoes. For half a second, your stomach drops. You were supposed to leave 10 minutes ago, not in 5 minutes. Not soon, but already. What's strange is that this isn't the first time. You knew exactly what time you needed to leave. You truly cared about being on time. You probably even thought about it earlier in the day. And yet somehow, the moment still arrived exactly the same way. Now, your mind is moving faster than your body. You're frantically calculating traffic. You're rewriting an apology in your head. And you're trying to figure out where the last 20 minutes went. Most people think this happens because you don't respect time enough, or because you're careless, or because deep down, you don't care as much as you say you do. But that explanation misses something incredibly important. Because people who truly don't care rarely spend this much energy feeling bad about it. This video isn't about productivity. It isn't about calendars, alarms, or discipline. Instead, it's about a psychological pattern that quietly shapes how you plan your day. A pattern that makes you trust an imaginary version of yourself that has never been consistently real. And once you see it, a lot of things start making complete sense. Let's start with the moment the problem actually begins. Because it doesn't begin when you're late. It begins much earlier, a lot earlier. You are standing right by the door, one hand slipping into your shoe, the other grabbing for your keys. Your phone screen lights up, and the exact second you look at the numbers on that screen, your stomach drops. A thought automatically flashes through your mind. How is it this late already? That is when the brutal reality hits you. You should have been out on the road by now, not just putting on your shoes. The panic does not actually start the moment you are officially late. It started long before that. The exact second you realized you were wrong about time again. Up until that final desperate glance at the clock, your brain was lying to you, whispering that everything was under control and that your schedule was still totally doable. But then, reality crashes in, and your brain is forced to update its timeline all at once. The truth is, you are usually late long before you physically leave the house. Again. The cost is that your day kicks off with a heavy dose of failure before it even genuinely begins. You are thrown into a breathless race against the clock, drowning in exhaustion and guilt. Honestly, you were not surprised by being late. What actually shook you was the fact that you were wrong. Wrong about your own perception of time. And that frustrating surprise keeps happening over and over for a very specific reason. You are all ready to go, but you still have a few minutes to spare before leaving. You look around the house and tell yourself, this will only take a minute. So you bend down to reply to just one message, put away just one dish, or open your phone to check just one last email. Almost nobody consciously decides to be late. Instead, they decide to do just one more thing first. That is exactly when the most expensive lie arrives under a completely harmless disguise. The phrase, "I still have time." In a vacuum, each of those tiny tasks feels quick and easy. Your brain is only evaluating the effort of the task itself. It completely ignores the accumulated delay. It never does. The cost is that a series of perfectly reasonable decisions ends up creating a completely irrational outcome. Lateness rarely comes from one single bad choice. It comes from a chain of innocent decisions linked together. But why do those bad choices always feel so reasonable when we make them? When you build your schedule for tomorrow, you usually tell yourself, "Tomorrow I will be more efficient." You estimate how long it takes to shower, get dressed, find your keys, and drive. In your head, everything goes absolutely perfectly in that estimate. But the person in that schedule is not actually you. It is just the version of you you hope shows up. The core truth is, most planning is built around an imaginary version of yourself. Your brain predicts the future using your absolute ideal performance. It completely ignores friction, because friction always feels temporary. You genuinely assume that tomorrow you will not scroll through your phone, you will not misplace your wallet, and you will not hit traffic. But you won't. The cost is that your plans become mere fantasies disguised as schedules. You keep making promises using evidence that does not even exist. And the strangest part is, you believe those promises every single time. Think back for a second. How many mornings in your past have ended in a breathless, stressful rush? 20 times, or maybe even 100 times. It always plays out the exact same way. Yet, when you sit down to plan your day today, your estimates are still bursting with optimism. Every single time you face a new day, that familiar phrase echoes in your mind. This time will be different. Past failures should change how you predict the future, but in reality, they rarely do. The deeper mechanism is that your brain trusts optimism way more than it trusts history. Your brain is hardwired to remember your good intentions much stronger than actual outcomes. It recalls what you meant to do, not what actually ended up happening. You remember that you intended to wake up early, intended to leave on time, and your brain treats that intention as proof that you can do it. But history disagrees. The cost is that the exact same old mistake feels brand new every single time it happens. You are not learning from experience. The only thing you are relying on is pure hope, and that changes everything. In the beginning, being late only happens a few times. But then, you start to notice that your friends no longer expect you to be on time. Your coworkers start using your lateness as a running joke, even before you manage to step foot into the office. That is exactly when the real psychological trap snaps shut. People around you have stopped talking about your specific actions. Instead, they start passing judgment on who you are as a person. The core truth is, a repeated habit slowly becomes a silent personality verdict. Human psychology is wired to turn repeated behaviors into character conclusions. The cost here is incredibly heavy. Your problem now is no longer about being late. It has transformed into a problem of identity. One day, you look in the mirror and ask yourself, maybe this is just who I am. That hurts. The worst consequence of being late is not that you missed an appointment. It is that you get labeled, becoming the late person in the eyes of everyone else. And over time, that criticism and judgment starts to bleed inside of you. You are sitting behind the wheel, rushing through traffic to get to your next commitment. Even though you are not there yet, your mind is already rehearsing apologies over and over again. You are desperately trying to find a reasonable excuse to explain away your lateness. That is the exact moment the battle shifts inward. At some point, the clock stops accusing you. Instead, you start doing it to yourself. The core truth is, most chronic lateness eventually turns into a brutal internal self-attack. The mechanism of psychology is that when shame hits, It demands an explanation. And the easiest answer your brain can find is a personal defect. You look at the steering wheel, and a painful question flashes through your mind. What is wrong with me? The cost is incredibly cruel. Your lateness is no longer just a behavior. It becomes proof of your inadequacy. You criticize yourself. You drown in guilt, and you promise to fix it next time. But nothing changes. The real consequence here is that you do not just lose precious minutes on the clock. What you actually lose is trust in yourself. And that creates a brand new problem. A dark corner that nobody ever talks about. As time goes on, the cost of chronic lateness becomes much quieter and much more dangerous. You start declining invitations from friends. You avoid long-term commitments at work, and you stay away from any situation that requires strict timing. Every time a new opportunity comes up, an avoiding voice echoes inside your head. If I don't commit, I can't fail. The anxiety is no longer just about being late. It has evolved into a fear of showing up. The core truth is, the longer this pattern continues, the smaller your world becomes. The psychological mechanism here is pure anxiety, constantly predicting future embarrassment. To protect yourself from that guilt, your brain chooses to withdraw. But the cost is incredibly lonely. Protection accidentally turns into complete isolation. The trap worked. You escaped the shame of being late. But at the exact same time, you escaped every single opportunity to grow and connect. So what happens when fighting harder stops working? The real turning point does not come from blindly trying to fix yourself. It comes the exact moment you look in the mirror and tell yourself, I need a system for the real me. Progress genuinely begins when you stop planning around the imaginary version of yourself you wish you were. Some people never completely solve their lateness. Instead, they learn to live with it and account for it. You start building absurdly large time buffers for yourself. You accept leaving the house much earlier than feels necessary, and you redesign your life around your predictable weaknesses. The mechanism of this shift is that practical compensation completely replaces hopeless self-correction. The cost here is that you have to surrender the fantasy of that perfect, non-existent version of yourself. But the benefit you gain in return is priceless. You finally gain reliability. Finally. Reality becomes useful the very moment pure hope stops doing the scheduling for you. And that is exactly when all the pieces fall right into place. Perhaps the real problem was never your relationship with time. It was your relationship with prediction. You kept building plans around a version of yourself that always seemed close enough to trust. A version that woke up earlier, moved faster, got distracted less, started immediately, and finished everything right on schedule. But the problem is, that perfect person only existed inside the plan, not inside the day itself. If this video felt uncomfortably familiar, you are probably not someone who does not care. You are just someone who keeps making commitments with your hopeful self and paying the consequences with your actual self. Most people don't lose time. They lose track of which version of themselves they are planning for. Right now, I am curious about one specific moment. What is the most common sentence you tell yourself right before you are late again? It is not the excuse you give to other people. It is the sentence you tell yourself. Leave a comment and let me know. If you enjoy psychology that stays close to real behavior, instead of simple, lazy labels, please subscribe. There are always psychological patterns hiding inside ordinary moments that most people never notice. Tomorrow, you will probably look at a clock somewhere and for a split second, you will hear a familiar thought. When that happens, pay close attention to which version of you is speaking.